Laser boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Now, today we're going to be talking about a Black Swan event. But you might be like, hey, I thought you made a video about this. And I said, I would say to you, yes, I have. But that was mainly about Bitcoin, right? What about altcoins? Okay, where would altcoins go if there was a Black Swan event? Now, if you don't know what a Black Swan event is, usually when there's a lot of things happening around the world for the worse that cause the markets to crash, right? To put it into simple terms. Last time in 2020, right, we had COVID, right? COVID, the whole markets just kind of crashed for a month. We can see altcoins were at 24 billion market cap and they went down all the way to 7 billion. Okay, so it dropped a drastic amount. It dropped roughly 75%. Okay, if we take it, boom, we can see 71%. So it dropped 71% in about a month. Now imagine us dropping 71% now, right? If we dropped 71% now, I mean, we'd be going to numbers that we wouldn't even have seen during the bear market. Now, I'm not saying it's going to drop 71% now because I do believe, right, there's a lot more stabilization, and dropping that far would practically mean the cycle is over and altcoin season never happened. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up as a potential thing to look out for, right? I know it's more stress, but welcome to crypto. Welcome to trading. That is just how it is. This is why I actually, trade. I trade because trading, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it goes up or down. If you know something's going to go down, you just sell. If you know something's going to go up, you just buy. Okay. That's why trading is my number one thing, my number one hobby, my life. Crypto and all this comes second because trading is always flexible. But anyways, that's a story for another time. Look, crypto, right? Overall, it's a little bit in danger. Why? Well, because, ladies and gentlemen, there have been war tensions, right? There's been war between Israel and Iran, right? And there's tensions that potentially World War III might be happening. Okay. Now, I don't think World War III will be happening. I really hope it does not happen. Okay. But it is always something we have to consider. Okay. And even if, ladies and gentlemen, okay, even if it does not happen, things can still escalate to a point where it looks very, 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 very scary. Okay. Even something like this, ladies and gentlemen, right? There's news that just came out that, over an hour ago, Pentagon moving more fighter jets to Middle East. That's what Fox said. Now, look, ladies and gentlemen, right? Here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. Once America gets involved and other countries start getting involved, that's practically like a world war, right? So very, very not ideal. Just, obviously lives, like the whole live things aside, I mean, it's crazy to put aside, but I mean, we're just mainly talking financially, right? It's going to be horrible, right? It's going to be horrible. Now, obviously, war itself is devastating. It compares nothing to, losing money in crypto or having your coins go down. So bless those hearts that are, in danger, that could be potentially in danger, and those that lost their lives. But look, if we do not have a Black Swan event, then we are going to be fine. But as of right now, the analysis, nothing shows that we are looking to be pumping to the upside. We can see that we have been consistently closing lower and lower on the daily when it has come to altcoins, right? So even just based off pure technical analysis, we can see that we are moving to the downside. Now, this is something that I'm also paying attention to, though, is, we did have one very strong pump in the beginning of May. And we've had multiple sell-off candles, but they've been, fairly weak, right? It's taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of practically selling pressure to kind of get to the bottom of this candle compared to one very big pump. So the ratios are looking good. So I am looking for a potential pump to the upside if things don't escalate too far. Because based off technical analysis, this is actually looking fantastic for a pump to the upside. But because of the fundamentals, because of the war tensions and things escalating every single day, every single hour, I do have to just consider this as a possibility of following the markets, right? Just simply for what I see them, right? And like I said, for what I see is simply lower and lower and lower highs consistently. Okay. And even if we have a pull up or pull back and then we go lower, right, it would still create a lower high and then eventually it would break through this zone. Okay. See, the reason why I mentioned in the first place that it could pump is because in contexts where the markets are bullish, right? Even when you see something like this, lower and lower highs, usually the floor holds. So what happens is price gets trapped and then it just explodes to the upside. Okay. But since the war tensions have been growing, right, we must just consider the possibility of us dumping lower. Now, how low could we dump is the real question. Okay. Well, the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, the reality is that we could dump even potentially as low as these levels over here of 160 billion market cap. So that would be a drastic drop, dropping 35%, even potentially lower down to 47%. Okay, because this is just the top of the support, and usually price does go lower than just the top of support. So generally speaking, the whole altcoin market could be going down, let's just say 35 to 50% if things really, really escalate. Okay. Now, of course, we don't want that. Now, the only positive news in terms of technical analysis is that we are closing the 3-month candle soon. Okay. We are closing it by the end of June. But what we don't really want to see is the last 2 weeks of June sell off. And for this 3-month candle to turn bearish, because, ladies and gentlemen, that means there will be a high probability of us actually coming down to these levels that we were just talking about. Okay. So the next 2 weeks are very important in terms of technical analysis and in terms of news, of course. So we must just pay attention and we must keep an eye out. Now, this does mean your beloved coins would take a big hit, right? We'd see Bitcoin go down possibly to 85 to 90,000. Something like AKT would probably be like 60 cents. Render would probably go to $2, sub $2. CASP would probably be 4 to 5 cents. Myra would probably be under a cent. XRP would be $1.50. ICP would probably be around $3.50 to $4. Turbo, right? Turbo probably around 0.002. Radium, $1.10. PNG probably back down to like 7 or 8 cents. So ladies and gentlemen, we do not want this happening. When we talk about purely the financial markets and nothing else, this is like the worst thing that could happen. But it is also the best in terms of buying opportunities if you still believe and you still have conviction that altcoin season will be happening. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.